Auckland really a city of fails?
It's the city of cones and nails, of closed-off trails, of barrier rails, and closing down sales.
State of the City report highlights an urgent need to lift Auckland's economic performance and competitiveness.
The city's dire productivity is mentioned time and time again, and the reasons for it, like low job confidence, inefficient land use, low rates of capital investment.
From a retail perspective, it's a really difficult time, and the CBD is super challenging.
There's been some big shift happen here. People are not building in the CBD anymore.
Or is the country's powerhouse just staggering under the blows of the financial crisis like the rest of the world?
To be fair, we've obviously had COVID and the convention centre burning and the impacts post-COVID and a decade of construction. So it's no wonder that some of our sectors are a bit challenged. It's not all, actually.
I think it's somewhere in between surviving and thriving. It's definitely not dying, but we know that the country is hurting at the moment, and Auckland is definitely feeling that too.
I mean, we are riding a cost of living crisis, but it's more than that.
I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, a look at what's wrong with Auckland, what's right, and what needs to be done to make it better. I'll speak to a journalist known for poking fun at the city's planning rules, and a new arrival who's brought the city joy in the form of Auckland FC. But first, the man whose job it is to be the chief cheerleader for the region's businesses. Simon Bridges, the CEO of the Auckland Business Chamber, who's been pushing the government to come up with some stimulus aimed at the city.
I think central government is listening. I think, what we need to see now is just a bit of, urgent action. I think, if you think about Auckland, we've had several years of difficulty, and you might say, well, what's several more months? But the reality is, even though things do get a bit better next year, there's a lot of pain out there. I mean, I put forward some ideas of things that could be done, but I don't have a monopoly on the answers. Ultimately, what we would want to see happen is stuff that is going to improve the sentiment and get some spending happening. Because if Auckland was a business, it'd be a business with a cash flow issue, right?
Central government might be listening. The government knows there's a problem, but it's not exactly charging to the rescue with solutions.
Simon Bridges, former National Party leader, last week saying, you need to do more right now. Will you change tack and actually potentially look at some short-term stimulus to fire up our largest city and its economy?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no doubt about, times are tough in our big cities, but I just say, and we'll keep looking at what we can do.
Okay, but what you were saying is Auckland's just going to have to tough it out. That's what you're saying. It's going to have to tough it out, and you're not going to bring any short-term measures in.
Look, I just say an Auckland-specific stimulus thing is quite difficult to do for, it's quite a difficult, I don't know how you'd go about doing that.
And so stuff that's going to get that going, whether it's more tourists, whether it's better events that again bring more tourists, both interregionally and from offshore, whether it's, international students. We're not so wealthy and things aren't going so well in Auckland that we don't need some of those things. Every
time I see an interview with you on this, there are pains to point out that you used to be the leader of the National Party. Has this position, the head of, you're sort of the business cheerleader for Auckland now as head of the chamber, has that given you an in to have your voice heard?
I think that's broadly true. I mean, firstly, I believe it or not, I work pretty hard not to be political. I don't consider myself political anymore. I think what I am doing is really speaking up for the thousands of small and medium businesses that the Auckland Business Chamber represents. And, really the messages are messages from business around the local economy here. Now, I'm not so naive to say as that may not have some reverberations, and I've already said the government will be listening. But really I'm reflecting the fact that, hey, there's some good things happening in New Zealand. We can see some long-term stuff coming, but in Auckland, it's still very tough. Auckland dances to its own kind of beat. It may be that there's some good stuff coming for next year, but how good will that be? So what are some things right now that probably you'd do anyway if you were thinking a lot about it? I've talked about tourism visas. I think people forget there is a tourism boom going on in Asia right now. Countries like Malaysia and Vietnam and Thailand have kind of never seen so many tourists. And they are coming from around Asia, right? Australia is not at that level, but I think it's fundamentally back pre-COVID. We aren't. And so you're going to say, what's gone on there? Well, actually, visas around all of this, tourism visas through Asia, have got more difficult. The process has been fraught. We're not rich enough that we don't need that money swirling around at a time when, in Auckland at least, hotel rates, occupancy, and so on is very bad, worse than last year, actually. So there's an idea. Doing the same around international education, a sector that's not remotely back to where it was pre-COVID. Events, Wayne Brown's talking about the bed levy.
Well, Auckland's mayor is renewing his call for a bed tax for the super city as it deals with some serious economic troubles.
They call it tax. It's not tax. It's a levy. It's quite different. It doesn't go to the government. They use the word tax so they can say no more taxes. It's just dumb. It's not a tax.
Look, whatever. I mean, my sense of it is circa, and don't quote me to the exact number, but we've gone from, actually, when I was Economic Development Minister, around $30 million are going into major events in Auckland per annum from both central and local government to kind of 10 million or less. And if Wayne doesn't get his bed levy, we're talking more like 3 or 4, I think, in his words, millions.
Yeah, but is that hypocritical from Wayne Brown, though? I mean, he's the one who cut funding to Events Auckland.
Well, and I suppose central government might agree with that, right? He's cutting his cloth to meet the circumstances, but he knows, and I hope central government's listening, that actually a 1.75 million city needs to have events and activations and things happening to make it a lively, vibrant place. We're never going to be a Sydney or Melbourne in this regard. They spend tens, if not hundreds of millions on this area. But we do need to do a better job and have a pipeline. I mean, I've been talking to the likes of the ASB Classic Tennis Centre. They're looking at roofing. It's peanuts in the scheme of central government investment. Local government's putting in. Central government, I think should be thinking about that as economic development. Eden Park, I acknowledge I'm on the board of Eden Park. They've got similar sort of issues going on. There's just a lot of these things that would add up to a package or a series of initiatives even that could make a real difference and get some money swirling around.
Can we look at some figures for a while? Because they're a bit contradictory. Retail's very flat. 6.1% in Auckland unemployment, highest of anywhere. But people are flooding in. We've had increases in the population of 2.8 and 2.5% over 2023, 2024. What's the conundrum there? Why are people still coming here to sit on the dole?
I think in the end, if you think about a new migrant, they will often want to go where the bright lights are. They will want to be in the biggest place. I'm no expert on our figures of Kiwis moving to America, but I tend to suggest they're not moving to Wyoming. It's New York, LA. Cities like that. So I think that's just a phenomenon you always get. Auckland is exceptional in population and being the place for business, being the most multicultural, and the point here, I think, is being the international gateway where new migrants come. I mean, you're right to say, hey, some sectors actually are going well. So let's be clear. It's not. I mean, I talked to some people in venture capital doing some amazing things with startups. It's very exciting. But I think as a generalisation, Auckland just isn't ultimately going well economically right now. Businesses, as a generalisation, are finding it very tough. We could highlight sectors: retail, tourism, construction, hospitality, as being particularly hard at the moment, but more generally, what businesses tell me is it's pretty tough as well. So, yeah, both those things can be true. People coming here still because it is the bright lights, the big city. but a very tough economic environment as well.
You mentioned construction because that's an interesting one. Do you think the government has a high enough awareness that its policies are contributing to the problems? You know, pulling the rug out from Kaingaora building has contributed to a great extent to the lack of opportunities in construction. Do you think in terms of carrying out their philosophical agenda, there's a recognition that they are hurting major sectors of the community?
I think two things are true. I think firstly, business as a generalisation would sit there and say, you know what, some of the reforms, really all of the reforms probably that we've seen from Chris Bishop around RMA and planning reform and fast tracking and these things, they are fantastic long-term initiatives. We've seen a lot from Chris Penkin's construction. They are, again, fantastic initiatives. But it's also true, and I talked, in fact, with a business person today who's making really the point that you've made. We have an issue around KO was funding a lot. You can argue whether it's good or not, but the pulling back of that, the tightening up, quite conservative kind of policy settings mean in the here and now, that is a contributor to the tough times construction is in.
And talking of tough times, one of the things people always mention in conjunction with Auckland and the CBD is the homeless issues. I saw a figure the other day, it's increased by 90%. How big a factor is that in putting people off coming into the city?
I think it's a factor. I'm a city dweller and, I'm in walking around the city a lot. But, I think we, again, just could try and have the power of positive thinking and say we shouldn't say negative things because actually, that'll only make it worse and you can contributing to the doom and gloom. But I think we have to be real. There's very significant homeless and social issues that are still present. They're not new, but in some instances they may be getting worse, and in some better, and in some worse. Around the public library in Auckland, there's a very significant set of issues there. In parts of Queen Street and the surrounds. In the end, if you sit there with 6.2% unemployment, very low or lower participation rates, that's not going to help make these issues better. Albeit on the other side of it, when we talk antisocial, credit where it's due. I think we are seeing fewer ram raids, and some of that sort of hard criminality does seem to have dissipated a bit with a higher, albeit I think Viv Beck from the Heart of City and others would agree with me, not necessarily high enough police and security presence to give a perception of safety and security in our city centre. The city centre is our shop front to the world, and I think we can say the Auckland Queen Street city centre is the shop front. If you're on a cruise and you're coming in, if you're just got off a plane and you're coming in, well, you might actually go to Waiheke, but fundamentally you'll be coming there. And so, there is a very special case for making sure that it spruces up well. There's dozens of factors that go into that, but safety and security and a perception of safety is very important.
Something that's driven the narrative about Auckland being a bit shit is a Deloitte report that came out last month.
Auckland's annual report card is out with the release of the third annual The State of the City findings. Super City wins for sustainability, resilience and culture, but is lagging behind others in opportunity and prosperity, which is the stuff that really makes a difference.
It compares Auckland with similar cities around the world and reveals a litany of shortcomings across transport, investment, housing, innovation, education and culture.
This Deloitte's report that came out compares us, we're in a basket of 10 similar cities, and this one's got a better congestion charging rate than us, and this one's got a better train system, blah, blah, blah. One of those cities is Tel Aviv.
Yeah, Trace, right now air raid sirens are sounding across Tel Aviv amid incoming ballistic missile fire.
Yes, all right, they may have a really good congestion charging system, but I would rather be in Auckland at the moment. Has that report cast a very gloomy light over Auckland and ignored all the good stuff?
Well, I think it's objective, and I think it's worthwhile. I mean, your specific points around Tel Aviv and Israel, I think, we could all agree on that. If we put the war to one side, and of course we can't, pre-war, Tel Aviv was a world-leading tech and innovation hub. It had some remarkable things going on in the business and economic sense. New Zealand, I think I'm right to say, or Auckland, I should say, does very well in some of the kind of the lifestyle and environmental factors. We can lead in those areas. But, I think the report's objective. I think, some areas we're going okay, but heck, we certainly can't be complacent. It's a tough economic environment. There's more that needs to happen there. We've talked safety and security. We could talk accessibility. There are just a bunch of things that we need to keep pushing on to make sure that we're, in what is a global competition, a city that's first class.
So if our safety and security needs improving, you have to wonder how Tel Aviv scored on that one.
Yeah, that sort of thing doesn't really make the productivity, transport, walkability matrix, does it? Sort of overall vibes of not being in a literal war zone.
North Shore resident Hayden Donnell is a senior writer for The Spin-Off.
I think we probably are a little bit negative about Auckland, that we maybe do undersell the fact that we have this beautiful natural environment. There's a lot of places that are going really well. At the same time, I think it's true that what the report is saying, that there are lots of areas where we could improve, where the rest of the world has caught up with this thing called walkable areas and pedestrian malls, and that kind of vibrant shopping that you can go to Europe and experience doesn't really happen here to the same extent. And so, yeah, there are criticisms that you can make, but you're probably right that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact we're very fortunate.
Hayden thinks the city is improving. The St James Theatre is finally being restored, the long-awaited City Rail link opens next year, and so does the International Convention Centre after its rebuild from a devastating fire.
It's got great beaches and great environment, and I think that some of the urban areas are improving a lot as well. The bus system gets talked down, but from the North Shore it's actually quite good. We've got places like Te Komititanga in the city. It's the big square outside Britomart, which is really lovely, improving stuff like the Wynyard Quarter, Britomart itself, that wider area. It's got great food. It's not Barcelona, but it's got great restaurants, like world class, and it's got a pretty laid back culture, great cafes, great coffee. That's what Auckland's got going for it, but mostly it's just that my family's here.
Free childcare is a prime attraction for Hayden, but other stuff is not so great.
There's a problem at the moment in Midtown where there's been a huge amount of construction and it's quite economically depressed. Now, there's a few different things going on, right? We're in the middle of quite a crushing recession that's been going on for a long time, and that doesn't exactly improve the vibes in any city, no matter where you're at. You've got construction that's been happening in Auckland Central, like the Midtown part of Auckland, for a really long time, and that hasn't exactly helped the economy that much. And yeah, we have government moves that have reportedly increased the worst aspect of homelessness, people that are just genuinely unhoused and are in desperate straits. So that's started to appear on the streets as well, and people don't like necessarily seeing the results of policy actions in that way. But I'm a bit of a defender. Even in the Midtown area, you have great restaurants. You have life that's starting to appear there as well. And I think it's going to improve markedly when the CRL open.
But the infrastructure pipeline behind the CRL is looking bleak, especially with government moves to cap rates rises, block councils from using other methods to raise money, and now the introduction of some hasty rules telling councils what they should focus on and how they should behave. It's telling them to stick to core services like roads, rubbish and water, and get rid of spending on cultural, community and environmental things, the nice-to-haves. the things the city is measured on internationally.
Simon Bridges said it, that there could be actually more government investment in Auckland. It just seems like there's an ideological point of difference there, where the government is more about cutting back spending, where the business community is crying out for more spending. A huge amount of our productivity problem as well is just that there's way too much traffic, and it's tough because people tend to want to fix the traffic problem by the same things that cause the traffic problem. They want to widen the motorways, get more space there for cars. Well, that's why we're in this mess in the first place, because we've tried that for 70 years. We've tried bigger motorways and more cars for 70 years. Our roads are chock-a-block, and we need to actually invest in more public transport, walkable spaces, even, dare I say it, cycleways that actually are more efficient at carrying people around. I'm sorry. Please don't switch off the detail. We need some of them. Potentially, there are too many cars. Everyone that's taking a trip not in a car is someone that's not trafficking your way.
Breathtaking. Barnstorming. Brilliant.
Something we do have here is Auckland FC, which has lit the city up with its nearly all-conquering ways this year, breaking A-League crowd records in its debut season. The director of Auckland football is Terry McFlynn, who grew up in a little village in South Derry, Northern Ireland. He's lived in Perth, Sydney and London. Now he lives in Auckland.
Absolutely loved my whole time in Auckland as a visitor, and I knew it was going to be an easy place to live. People are friendly. It's an easy city to get around. Beautiful people, beautiful countryside, beautiful outlook. Like I said, I absolutely love living in Auckland.
And you were at a conference last week called Revved, weren't you?
Yeah, last week. Yeah, that's right.
Well, was that like a cheerleading episode for business? What was that about?
It was a conference brought together by Anna Mowbray and Rochelle Moffat, just basically celebrating everything business and everything New Zealand and in Auckland, and just really giving everyone a sort of connection and a bit of positivity around the economic situation that we all find ourselves in the minute, and sharing ideas and just letting everyone know that we're all there to help each other in any way we possibly can.
So when you hear things like the mayor saying, look, our productivity's low and our traffic's a mess and we've got to improve and we need help, how does that gel with the Auckland that you know?
Oh, look, I think the Auckland that we know, when we set up the football club, that was one thing that we wanted to do, was contribute to society and contribute to the community as well. And, we made a statement that we wanted to become an extension of people's lifestyle. So things like the economy slowing down and the traffic and things, we want to give people a purpose and having a bit of joy in their life. And, if that means when you're doing your family budget, you set some money aside to bring your family to the football on the weekends, or you don't mind battling the traffic if there's a bit of entertainment at the end of it in terms of the game and the match day experience for the kids. So that was something that we were very, very conscious of doing and making sure we made a positive contribution to society. So yeah, look, for us it's a very satisfying accomplishment to see all the kids running around the streets of Auckland with Auckland FC shirts on, match day, seeing them come down the slide on the Ferris wheels. The teenagers there in the port singing and having a really good time and enjoying themselves. And then it's a joy at the end of it when we can win the game and get 3 points and celebrate with the fans and everyone goes home happy. I think there's a lot of people that takes a lot of pride in Auckland as a city and wants to see it progress and wants to see it a vibrant city, which I believe it is. I think the restaurants and bars and that lifestyle that Auckland can give us around the viaduct and down around the harbour, it's second to none in the whole world, in my opinion. So I think there's enough energy, drive and goodwill to make the city as great as possible.
So cheers from Auckland FC. But could the city's chief cheerleader, Mayor Wayne Brown, do a better job of talking Auckland up?
Yeah, well, he's not one of those big up sorts of mayors. He is definitely someone that sees the negative side and wants to fix something rather than someone that just wants to celebrate stuff. Maybe he could do a bit more cheerleading. Maybe you're right there, Alexia. Maybe we could all stand to be a little bit more positive in this life. He does say that there are good things happening about Auckland. Maybe he could be louder about them.
That's it for today. The Detail's a newsroom production supported by New Zealand On Air and RNZ. This episode was engineered by Rangi Powick and produced by Gwen McClure. Thanks to Simon Bridges, Hayden Donnell and Terry McFlynn. I'm Alexia Russell. Thanks for listening.